Hi there everyone, welcome to STEM Lockdown Digital School. This is grade 12 IT and I am your presenter Lalane de Gransie. So today, as promised, we're going to look at the final or the supplementary paper of 2019, question 4, the harder question, but it wasn't actually that hard. So before we tackle this question, we need to see what values were given, and there was an array called array types it's a one-dimensional array from 1 to 4 containing these values, and it's the different types of trees. Then we had another one-dimensional array with 24 trees listed in here. So this is array list and it contains the names of 24 trees, but then it also has a hash and then the type of tree indicated after the hash. Another way this question could have been asked is to place these values in a text file. So the C will indicate that it's a citrus tree, and the T for tropical, and the N for nuts, and the D for deciduous. You also then had a two-dimensional array declared for you. Currently the array is empty, and it has 4 rows and 6 columns. And the 4 rows correspond with your types of trees because your array types had 4 values in that one-dimensional array, and we can have a maximum of 6 trees per type. Make sure that you use these variables declared for you that was assigned at the top. So in this first button, what they're asking you to do is to take the array list and then place the trees in the correct row. So row 1 is going to contain all my citrus trees that have a hash C, and then the deciduous trees are in row 2, nuts in 3, and then tropical in 4, and depending on what goes after the hash, that is in which row you need to place that tree. Before you try this, I just want to show you there was an error in the data files. So this is actually what was given. I've just copied out part of it. And the mistake that was made was instead of a T for tropical, they've placed an S there. So you have two options. You can either change all the S's for T's as I have done, or you can just search for an S instead of a T. So here is the rest of the question. You can run your program, but currently it will not display because you have not written the code to display. So it might be a good idea for you to do question 4.2 as well and just display array types with these labels as well, which is from your one-dimensional array. Press pause. I'll show you the memo for both buttons just now. So what I'm doing here is I'm looping from 1 to itypes. Itypes was our global variable and it had a value of 4, which corresponds with my rows in my two-dimensional array. It then also corresponds with my array types because the first one is for the citrus trees. Array types will then hold the value of citrus, and then I will be able to store it in the correct position, and I'll also be able to display it later using array types. Now, since I don't want to add all the trees in the column for each row, I will need to create a new variable icol that I initialize to 0, and when I add a tree to this row, I then ink that I column, and then I place the tree in the current row in the next column. So this inner loop of mine is just looping through my one-dimensional array list that contains the values of the trees that would look like that. So I have stored now the length of this array in iLast. You could put this code in here as well, but I thought it would be easier for you to see what I'm doing by breaking it down into more steps. So array list is the list with 24 items, so we're going to refer to that item with using iRow, and then iLast is the last character of that item in the array. So if this was the value, we would be referring to the C. And we're testing it against array type. So while K is 1, I'm going to place all the citrus trees in array trees 1. So you'll see the K's there correspond. So I am testing if the last character in array list is equal to the first character of array type. So citrus would be stored in there with a C. And then I'm incrementing my column counter here, and I am placing, if it is the first citrus tree I'm adding, this would be 1, and I'm placing the first citrus tree into array trees 1, column 1. The second citrus tree is then added until I have all the citrus trees in array trees, row 1. Then only do I loop and I go to the second row of array trees. So the second row is for the deciduous trees, and I'm starting its columns also with 0. And now I'm looping again through my array with a list of trees, testing now if the last character is D, because array types 2 would be deciduous, and I'm testing if the last character of the item in array list is a D. If it is, I increment the column counter and I add that tree to array trees I call. Lastly, you have to make sure that you enable the next 2 buttons. Since the question asked me here to use modular design, I decided to create a display procedure for array trees. And here is my display. I'm displaying in a rich edit. I first need to clear it, and I'm looping with my rows from 1 to itypes, itypes being your global variable. Itypes had a value of 4, and that corresponds with the number of rows that I have in my 2-dimensional array. I need to add the type first, so I start my display string variable with the type that it is currently at. So for number 1, it will add citrus now to sDisplay, a colon, and then a tab space. And then I loop with my inner loop I call all the way from 1 to 6. Inum was 6 because I had 6 columns in my 2-dimensional array. And I add each tree's name to my sDisplay. Before I loop again to go to the next row, I then display sDisplay in my rich edit, and then only do I go to my second row, then adding deciduous to sDisplay and building the rest of the rows like that. So all I have here in my button 4.2 is calling my display procedure. So in this last question, we are asked to do some sorting. Press pause and try it yourself. So first you have to delete the last 2 characters. You will see in the output that you don't see the hash and the character after the hash. So that is the first part, and then you need to have a look at your array trees, and within each row, this is my 2-dimensional array, within a row, the names of the trees must be in alphabetical order. So you're keeping the rows the same, but you are changing the columns. So what I'm doing here is I'm looping from 1 to 4. itypes was given a value as a global variable, and the value there was 4. And this represents the rows, number of rows in my array trees. Within that now, I first need to get rid of the hash inside of the array tree. So here I'm looping in my column with my column counter from 1 to inum, and inum was 6. That was the number of columns of array trees. And I'm finding the position of the hash, and then I am deleting from the hash for 2 characters. So after this line, I will be left with orange instead of orange hash C. Still inside of this loop, so let's pretend we're still in the first time that it's executing. So I row will be 1. Everywhere in here you will see I row stays the same. I am looping now through my columns. So my columns have the value stored in inum, and remember it's inum minus 1. And then on my inner loop loops from I out plus 1 all the way to inum. Then I test in here if the 1 value, we're still keeping the row the same, but I'm comparing the columns with each other, I out and I in. And if the one is greater than the other, then I start my swapping process similar to what we do in 1-dimensional arrays. You start and end with your keeper, and keeping the rows the same because I don't want to change citrus to nuts. I want to keep the row, but I'm swapping the column. So if I out is on the right, in the next line I out needs to be on the left. Then I will follow with I in on the right and I in on the left. And then it goes to the second row, deletes the hashes and the character and swaps that row and all the way through to the end, which is row 4. And here at the bottom I just called my display procedure, which will work now because I have deleted the hashes from my array trees, and I've also sorted array trees, and display is displaying that two-dimensional array. So since we have some time left, we're going to look at the final of 2018, the theory paper, question 4. Question 4 and 5 of theory papers really needs to be practiced. And I suggest that you start making some notes on the side so that you can keep track of things that you would like to remember, because they're not that easy to study for. So this question is asking us to create a table TBL waiter, or they've given us part of the table, and then in here they are showing us what the job card would look like for a waiter. So here we have TBL waiter, and the first question is, what is the data type of the waiter ID? As you can see here at the top is the waiter ID, and it contains a W even though it has a number, so therefore it would be a text data type. The next question then asked us what would be the data type of permanent appointment. So if you have a look here, there's a little checkbox with a tick in it, so that would indicate that it's a yes/no data type. Now the next question asked us, we wanted to have an alphabetical list of the waiters, but sorted according to surname. And they wanted you to look at the structure of this table here to state why it would not be possible to generate such a report. Now if we look at the field here, initial and surname, that is going to contain both the initial and the surname. In other words, when you're going to sort according to that field, it will sort according to initial and not according to the surname. So this table has not been normalized, and the solution to that would be to separate the initial and surname field, and then you have two fields instead of the one, and you'll be able to sort according to the surname. So now we have this table TBL waiter, and then they give you the layout of TBL job card. And they ask you first what is the primary key that you would suggest for a job card. So one waiter will have many job cards. If you have a look here at the top, each job card has a number. This one is JC10012, and that would be the field that I would add here. I would add for the primary key a job card number field, because that would be unique to each job card. Then they also asked you what would be the foreign key in TBL job card. So that is the field through which you would link. And one waiter will have many job cards, and the best is to use your primary key in your TBL waiter and link that with your TBL job card. So you would add waiter ID in the TBL job card table, and that will become your foreign key. Then the question further asked, what other fields would you add? And you'll definitely add the start week, as well as they've given you the normal hours worked. And then the only other field you will add is the overtime hours worked. You won't add the total hours because that would be redundant. You may not add a field that can be calculated from other fields in a table. And since I already have normal hours and overtime hours in this table TBL job card, there would be no point in adding the total hours worked, because that I can just calculate by adding up the two others. The next question asked us now to create an entity relationship diagram, ERD. And just to go over that again, we have the two tables now. One waiter has many job cards. So I always refer to this table here as the parent table, as one parent can have many children. First of all, you'll put the 2 blocks here, and inside of these blocks you will put a noun. And that noun needs to describe the entity that you are storing in that table. So in this table here, I'm storing the value of a waiter. And in this table here, I'm storing the value of a job card. Then you have to draw this line here, and these 2 vertical lines here indicate that there is one and only one of each waiter. We have the waiter ID there as a primary key, so one waiter's ID, surname, initial, and whether they're permanent or not will only appear once, and that's why I'm putting the 1 there. Then at the job card side, I will put my crow's foot. So you can see these lines, that indicates that one waiter has many job cards. And on the line here, what you need to put is a verb indicating how are these linked. So usually the word has work because one waiter has many job cards. So first I'd like you to list 3 types of errors. Those are not the Delphi errors, the specific wording that you find in Delphi, but it's the type of errors that we find. Those are our logical, syntax, and runtime errors. So logical errors are when you are calculating something in a formula, your code is running perfectly, but you're producing the incorrect output or possibly not output at all. That would be a logical error. If you can imagine the code running and you can see that this code given would give me a red line over my code so it will prevent me from running, that means that it is a syntax error. And then the last error is a runtime error. And this error is when you are running your program and when you click on the button or maybe even in form on activate, your program crashes. So below is a list of examples of runtime errors. If we're going to divide by 0, our program will crash. If you have a data type mismatch, in other words, the person is maybe entering a character instead of a number and you try to string to int that would be a runtime error and your program will crash. Then also, if you are referencing an index in an array that is not part of the declaration, so this is that access violation that you guys often get when you're using arrays. Let's say I had an array that was declared from 1 to 20 and you are either trying to access array number 0, which doesn't exist, or maybe array 21 that doesn't exist. And then the last one there is attempting to access a file that is not available. So maybe you have not tested if the file exists and you're trying to assign file, but the file is not stored in the correct folder and therefore you get a crash. It's usually an input-output error and that would be a runtime error. So before you watch our next lesson, please go and download the 2018 supplementary paper from education.gov.za. We are going to look at question 1 next. Here is the website, education.gov.za. Just click on Curriculum and National Senior Certificate. And on the right, you will see all your 2018 papers. The one was written in November. You want to download the other one. And also remember to go to Dandelion Delphi to find more useful tips and tricks for your exam. Thank you very much for watching Grade 12 IT at STEM Lockdown Digital School. Please remember to follow Africa Teen Gigs on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and also find more YouTubes under the channel Africa Teen Gigs in the Grade 12 IT playlist. Hope to see you soon.